everybody. Welcome to the KXAN Live Studios. This is the Horns Report. I'm your host, Billy Gates, and this is the show where we talk about all things UT athletics, football specifically, and what a game the Longhorns had last Saturday. A 31-12 win over Michigan, vaults them to number 2 in the latest Associated Press poll. And here to talk about it is KXAN Sports Director Roger Wallace. Roger, you were there for that game at the Big House, the largest stadium in the country. What was that atmosphere like? That had to have been just insane.
It was great. I mean, it was a fall Saturday that was, right out of a handbook, 50-degree temperatures, just a great atmosphere. And Texas had their share. Sark talked a lot about the Longhorn fans that made the trip. I would guess 10, 12,000 fans. And by the end of the game, that was all left in the Big House. But it was everything you probably thought of when you said Texas and Michigan, and you got a little cooler temperatures than normal up there. And then, of course, as you said, Texas won 31-12, and believe it or not, it probably wasn't that close. Kind of took the foot off the gas, or maybe didn't execute as well in the fourth quarter. That's what Sark talked about today. That's one of the things he'd like to see. But, yeah, pretty dominant performance. I know there's going to be a narrative about, is Texas that good, or is Michigan coming off the national championship not very good? Obviously, they're breaking in a new quarterback. But bottom line is Texas went in there and took care of business, and really there were no big dramatic moments in that game after they grabbed that 2-score lead.
Right. I think the most impressive thing about what Texas did was 31 points against that defense. That defense is still really good, even if the offense is, basically a whole brand new offense with the loss of Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy, and all those offensive linemen. But that defense Michigan has is still really good, and Texas putting up that many points, that's pretty impressive.
And one of their longest drives was one that ended in a missed field goal, and that was their first drive of the game, and they kept shooting themselves in the foot, a couple of false start penalties, and then the big one, obviously, the holding penalty on the touchdown pass from Quinn Ewers to DeAndre Moore, and then Bert Auburn misses a field goal. But you're right, they moved the ball. Then they score on 4 consecutive drives. They got a couple of short fields thanks to turnovers, the Andrew Makuba pick on the tip drill, and then kind of an inexplicable play by Colston Loveland, their All-American tight end, just kind of bounced it off his hip after making a catch. I don't think he would have had the first down in that particular play. But, yeah, the offense moved the ball well. Quinn Ewers, the first thing you can't do against a team like that, make mistakes, and he didn't. And he was efficient, took his shots when he had them, didn't complete anything over the top, and made some big throws. Maybe the most impressive one was on that drive that didn't lead to points, and that was the deep ball to Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, that was quite a throw. He put that thing right where it needed to be. Yeah. And now just kind of, you have to turn the page. That's just sort of the nature of this. I mean, you have the 24-hour rule. You celebrate the win for 24 hours, then move on to the next opponent. Now, Texas' next opponent, not quite as big as the Michigan Wolverines. It's the UTSA Roadrunners from just down the road here in San Antonio. They got blasted by Texas State 49-10 last week. That's typically not a thing you see. That was Texas State's first ever win in that little I-35 rivalry series they have with the Roadrunners. Steve Sarkisian was asked about that at today's press conference, saying, how do you avoid that sort of letdown coming off of a huge win against a very, very esteemed opponent, and then you got to come play UTSA, who's reeling pretty hard? And it was interesting to hear him kind of go over their process. I mean, he showed his team the clip of Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame and kind of explain that sort of scenario. I mean, that seems like a pretty good way to handle that, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, that's a page out of Mac Brown's old playbook, and he'd talk a lot, especially if they played a night game and there was some big upsets early in the day, and he would have time to process it. And when he was on that 10-year run and they were favored in almost every game, and that would be a big talking point. Look what happened here or there earlier in the day. And so, yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. And coaches need something to kind of grab onto because, let's be honest, they're a 30-point favorite. What you just said, where UTSA went down to San Marcos and just, got beaten thoroughly by Texas State. Of course, UTSA, remember, they won 32 games over the last 3 years, but There was a guy named Frank Harris, a
Right.
quarterback that threw for over 10,000 yards
Right.
in those 3 years. So now they're rebuilding at that position. Jeff Traylor, very well respected, former UT assistant, high school coaching legend in East Texas. But yeah, they gave up over 500 yards on offense to Texas State. They played 2 quarterbacks. We'll see what they do. But yeah, Sark's got to have something to grab onto and make sure that they kind of go by what you said, the 24-hour rule, and put that behind. And now they've got to stretch, Billy, 3 out of 4 at home. And they don't play out of the state of Texas until the end of October against Vanderbilt, because then they have the Oklahoma game.
Right.
And then they come home and they take on Georgia. So they're going to get a lot of home cooking. They're going to be in a comfortable environment. The Cotton Bowl's kind of comfortable.
Sort of. It's 50-50 split. Yeah.
Exactly. So, this is a chance now. We'll see if this team can really get on a run and work on the things that Sark talks about. Maybe a little bit more of a killer instinct in the fourth quarter. Pass rush that gets to the quarterback. He's commented on how they can bother the quarterback. He thought that was the case with the Makuba interception. Ethan Burke bothered him. But those are some of the things. And maybe hitting those home run runs. We're used to them in the last couple of years. Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, 12 yards turns into 60. That hasn't happened yet. And he talked about the next level blocking with the receivers. So plenty of things that he's concerned with. But you're right. You got to show him stuff that and that's a top 5 team losing at home as a 4 or 5 touchdown favorite.
Oh yeah, and that was about as shocking as anything I saw over the weekend for sure. And you mentioned the receiving and the blocking that you talked about. I thought that was interesting because he said that they're so worried about getting those receivers, with all the transfers and stuff like that, getting them in sync with the offensive, kind of passing game. And now as kind of the season goes on, they'll get more sort of, I guess, reps, for lack of a better term, in that downfield blocking sort of scheme to really spring those runs. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at it, considering he has all those new guys at the position trying to learn the passing tree, that sort of thing.
My guess is he's shown them tape of Jordan Whittington because
that guy.
He was as punishing for his size as we've seen as a blocker. And you're talking about 3 guys that came in that aren't real big: Isaiah Bond, Silas Borden, and Matthew Golden. And, guys that are out on the perimeter and usually running vertical routes and doing a lot of motion. But, the receivers blocking has always been such a big part of the running game. So you're exactly right. And then he talked about his philosophy with receivers has kind of changed a bit, and he goes for the smaller, faster guys. He inherited Jordan Whittington, so that's another factor. But, that aspect has to, help the running game down the field, because Jaden Blue is certainly capable of popping a big one. He did a number of times last year. And then, boy, you really have to like what you've seen from Jarrett Gibson. So much made from when C.J. Baxter went down, and that hurts, no doubt. You got worried if you're a Texas fan Saturday when Jaden Blue missed a lot of the first half, but Gibson looks like he's as good as advertised. And I go back, we've talked about it. You got 4 veterans on the offensive line. Now, Cam Williams had that first drive where he got 3 penalties, but he had
a rough first drive.
He was the SEC co-offensive lineman of the week, and that can make a lot of running backs look good. Those 5 guys up front.
Yeah. So Saturday, 6 p.m. at DKR, Texas plays UTSA. The last time those 2 teams played 2 years ago, 41-20 win for Texas. Although, as we talked about earlier, that was with Frank Harris at the trigger for the Roadrunners. They led 17-7 at one point of that game, got it back to 17 at halftime, and then some guy named Bijan Robinson took over in the second half and, did his thing, and Texas ends up winning what looked like comfortably, but that was anything but comfortable until the second half.
Yeah, and Sark talked about it. UTSA, the old wounded opponent, backed into a corner. No one's going to expect them to come in here and go toe-to-toe with Texas. And then, one thing leads to another. A ball bounces the wrong way, a turnover, an interception. All of a sudden, the crowd that just came to celebrate for 3.5 hours gets a little tense. We've seen it before, but, this Texas team, that's what, Sark's got some NFL pedigree in him, too, where, you didn't even think about looking past an opponent because it was the NFL. But I think he'll have them ready to go. And, both sides of the ball This team has been pretty buttoned up for 2 weeks. To think that Michigan didn't get in the end zone until it was irrelevant at the end of the ballgame. I don't care if you're playing against air. That's hard to keep teams out of the end zone.
Exactly. Well, we're all going to find out come Saturday. So we'll leave this one here. This will be the end of this episode of the Horns Report. For Roger Wallace, I'm Billy Gates. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again very soon.